face to start kicking ass, just like it said at the beginning of the program.
Man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
Sending your ass on the jabroni jet to the other side of the territory, brother.
The Alabama Hammer.
Nightmares are the best part of my day.
The goods from the wood.
Hot damn!
Welcome to the Goods from the Woods. My name is Rivers Langley.
I am Pat Riley.
This is a good night, man of the hour, tower of power, too sweet to be sour.
And today we are joined by world traveler, combat athlete, producer of wrestling, professional wrestling, and one of my dear friends.
Derek, I don't have a cool intro like everybody else, but hi. How's it?
What's your last name, buddy?
Oh, Smith.
That's a great nickname.
I'm cursed with the most generic white guy name on the face of the planet. I don't even know why I bother telling people my name, because there's like 3 million of us.
I guess it's...
I love how it's
The thing is, like, we're used to talking to, like, comics, and we're all, like, whores, so it's like, my name's Rivers Langley. You can find me on Twitter, at Rivers Langley, Instagram. You know, we're all very used to it, and you're a man that just you live for combat. You know, that's how you make that
That's the proper way to live. Let's face that fact, because violence is gold.
Yeah.
Combat
and fried chicken, mostly.
I just saw it as like Derek, open quote, I don't have a great intro.
Smith.
Close quote, Smith.
Yeah, that's fine too. My comedy is really subtle, guys.
It's Halloween, everybody. Happy Halloween. Derek, who, in addition to being an accomplished professional wrestler, also an accomplished mask maker and a maker of spooky costumes.
I guess they're spooky. It's funny because every time I make something, my partner who I usually make them with, he says, how come they look so frightening? And I'm like, I don't really know. It wasn't my intention. I just think that something deep in my subconscious is just really fucked up. So they all kind of come out looking somewhat terrifying. But, you know... I'm just trying to delight people, not scare them.
Right, yeah. Yeah, of course. And you wrestle with one of your own creations on your head, right? So
I've wrestled with many of my own creations on my head, yeah. I wrestle normally as the professional wrestler known as Serial Man. You can see me at both wrestling, pro wrestling, and Hood Slam.
When you were making the Serial Man mask, how many incarnations has there been of the mask?
So there was Serial Man 1, which was literally just a spandex suit with a cape. And then I had one of those crummy, like, what do they call them? Like domino masks.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. So I had that. That was Serial Man 1. Serial Man 2 was I actually made like a lucha mask with a domino mask on top of it. And had like hair. It kind of looked like the Night Stalker. And then I still have it somewhere. And then I had made this box out of foam and like material. And it was, it wasn't like the one you see now. It was more like a mascot head, I guess. You know, so I had like fake eyes and you look through the mouth. You couldn't really wrestle in it except for a couple of spots, but I used that. Funny thing is, when I first made it too, we just made it out of like foam and like Gorilla Glue and stuff. And I had put an old like lucha mask inside of it. So it had something to kind of like hold my head.
Yeah.
So it didn't just like wiggle around stuff. And so we were like, well, how do we keep the shape? I was like, well, I'll just wear the mask and we'll glue it on and it'll be fine. So I ended up gluing it to my head with Gorilla Glue, which wasn't really a whole lot of fun. And it's also notoriously hard to get out of your hair.
Oh, shit.
You can't use like water either. You have to use like
turpentine or solvent or something?
Something. I'm trying to remember. I think you have to use like oil. Like
WD-40.
Kind of oil. Yeah, something like that. I think
yeah.
What do you call it? Vaseline works pretty well too.
Yeah, petroleum based.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that took like 2 weeks to get it all out of my hair. We ripped it off my head that night, which was also unpleasant.
I'm surprised you didn't have a stage where you just put like a cereal box on your head. Just put your head in a cereal, like a giant, like shredded mini wheat.
That would have saved so much time.
Yeah, I never tried that, but I have seen at a couple of the Hood Slams, at least, there's occasionally I'll see people in the crowd that do that, where they're putting they just put cereal boxes on their head. And I'm like, oh wow, you guys are stupid. Is that what I look like?
These are your fans?
Yeah, right? I don't know. That's wrong with them.
That's awesome.
But, and then the version that everyone sees now was, it was something I always wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do it until I hooked up with Hunter Jackson, who is Techno Destructo. He's one one of the founding members of the band Gwar, if anyone remembers them. And
How can we forget Gwar?
Did you make you made the costumes for them?
I didn't make costumes for them. He was the guy who made them originally for them, and then he lives here in he lives in Echo Park now out here.
Oh, no shit.
And so I had hooked up with him through Brian Kendrick through some project that Brian was doing, and he showed me how to do it. He helped me make that first mask you see, and then I've just kind of taken it from there. So.
What material do you use? I was curious about that.
The masks are they're foam rubber, and then you paint them with like a mixture of like latex, like latex rubber, and then like interior house paint that you can just buy at Home Depot. And so so you kind of shape it into the shape you want out of the foam, and then you paint it with the latex and paint mixture with the stuff called cheesecloth. And cheesecloth is kind of what basically the process. It ends up that it makes it all one solid piece, and then it stays together like you see. So, and it's pretty strong. It's durable. It takes a beating pretty well. It'll probably disintegrate in like 20, 30 years, but other than that, it's not going to rip or anything.
Yeah, well, and that was the point I was going to bring up, is that it's something a lot of people, especially, maybe people who are listening who might be in costuming or whatever, aren't necessarily thinking about, which is if you're making something that's just a costume, it just has to look good for however long you're filming or in the play or whatever. If you're building something to wrestle in, it's going to take a pounding. Like, it's going to actually need to be durable.
It's going to take a beating. The other thing you have to keep in mind too is when you wrestle, you tend to sweat a lot.
Yeah.
So
it could get loose. It could get
loose, but
gross.
it could also get gross and start to like fall apart if it's not made out of the right material.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is people who have, and I've seen this with one of the characters at WPW, Ricotta Flair, who is a Ric Flair with a giant tub of ricotta cheese on his head. Every once in a while, it will get caught in something, and it's sort of scary when you're watching it because you're like, "Oh, this looks fucking horrifying." Like, like if it gets caught on a rope or something, and someone's trying to do a move, you're like, "Oh God, please don't bleed out of this mask."
Well, the guy that does it, John, it's always funny to see him because he wants to do all the Ric Flair mannerisms, right? He wants to do them all, and the one that's the really tough one is when he does the kind of hits the corner, flips over, does like the Ray Stevens sort of thing.
Yeah,
and he always tries to do it. And I remember one time him doing it, and he gets his mask caught in between the second and top rope.
Yeah,
and he just kind of like, it gets stuck, and he just kind of scorpions his back backwards and just goes down like some like you just pulled up a door stopper, one of the spring door stoppers, and went yeah.
My favorite thing about the Ricotta Flair character is the fact that we convinced someone to try to wrestle inside that thing.
Yeah,
because that thing is a monstrosity.
It's horrifying.
It looks really good. Like, I'm actually really proud of that mask.
Yeah,
but it is fucking enormous.
Yeah, well, it's enormous, and if you just stare too deeply into its eyes, it eats your soul.
Yeah,
like the real Ric Flair.
Yeah, it's got a slightly agape mouth.
That thing's so real. I wanted to loan it money to pay off its debts.
It's got slightly an agape mouth, as if making the woo sound that Ric Flair makes, but it just made this like such a horrifying looking thing. We'll put this up on our Twitter. You can find us at The Goods Pod, and I'll put up. There's a picture of me holding the Ricotta Flair mask like poor Yorick.
Yeah, can I tell you this, Rebels? If you haven't seen these masks, if you're listening and you've not seen a picture of these masks, they almost look like heads, like paper mache.
Yeah, they're
heads.
Gigantic heads, but they're obviously like made of foam rubber. They're way better made. And
but you know what they reminded me of?
What's that?
You know how in ancient Greece, when they would do all them plays like Oedipus and all the comedies, they would wear masks that were big heads just like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you come in with the Ricotta Flair and things like that,
Parm Anderson,
it is in a lot of ways keeping the traditions of ancient Greece alive too. Not just in wrestling, but in theater.
Well, that's what I mean. Hell, that's what I've said that about wrestling for years. That it's a continuation of vaudeville, but also of Greek theater. You have these big outlandish characters that the audience should be able to easily identify as soon as they come on stage. Like, that guy's a dickhead.
But there's a fundamental difference from Greek theater, though, because the violence happens on stage.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
wrestling.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because if you really think about it, wrestling started as carnival performances.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it
Yeah.
was. And, it's at the end of the day, it's performance art. And I mean, listen, I don't want to shock anyone, but, wrestling isn't particularly real.
What?
It's the getting hurt part is kind of real.
Yeah. Getting a cheese head caught on a rope and
like
flipping over and landing on your ass.
it's real in the sense that it helps. You should be an athlete. You don't have to be, but you
It
probably
helps.
should.
It hurts real.
It hurts
bad.
real and all that stuff, but they are just telling a story at the end of the day. So, what really is the difference between The Rock and Austin and then someone like Ricotta Flair is just the way you choose to do that performance. So, I mean, I've always been more of a comedic fan anyway, and the secret I feel like to comedy wrestling isn't so much trying to be funny, it's you're trying to be real, but your character just does things in a funny way.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're a comedic performer in wrestling and you're just going out there trying to be funny, you're going to suck. But if you look at it from the standpoint of, okay, the point of wrestling, any wrestling match is to win the match, correct?
Yes.
So there's various ways to go about it. Some guys throw punches and lock people in submission moves. Some guys do airplane spins and leg drops. I mean, it works either way, but that's how, if you want to be a good comedic performer, that's how you get across is you're still trying to do what every other wrestler is doing. You just do it in a dumber way.
Well, who's your favorite comedy wrestler?
I was a big fan of Kikutaro for a long time, so it was cool to get to wrestle him.
I was gonna say, that was a fun thing to watch.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Kikutaro is a Japanese wrestler, and it's just like there isn't a real character to it. It's just like somebody that's wearing a mask and like a baseball jersey, and he just like has really great comedic timing, and it's really funny. It's not like an overall gimmick where it's like I'm a giant baby or I'm from the future, or I'm a space alien.
It's a little more subtle, I guess. But him, I always really liked. I like going all the way back to like Doink the Clown. I thought I really think Doink is one of the best wrestling gimmicks ever. And I would die a happy man if I got hired by the WWE just to be Doink.
Well, now's the time to bring that shit back because, it's like the biggest movie of the summer.
You would think, right?
Now's the time.
I'll send Vince an email when I get home.
Yeah. No, that'd be dope. Like somebody looks under the ring for a chair and they just see your eyes light up yellow.
Clown, yeah. I think the clown character does have a lot of legs still. I think most of us don't like serious things, right?
Yeah,
we do,
exactly.
But we also like things that
it's a mix. It's back to, what you're saying about the carnival and vaudeville specifically. It's a true variety show. So you have a little bit of everything.
It's a circus. You have your strong men, you have your lion tamers, you have your acrobats, and you have your clowns. And they all have a place.
Yeah, there's room for everything in the wrestling carnival, if you will, the tent.
I just saw you did. Was it Count Chocula? Or?
Yeah. I like to do it around Halloween and bring back Count Chocula. I like to do different versions of Cereal Man every so often.
Right, yeah.
Just to kind of keep it interesting. Plus, it's an excuse for me to make a new costume.
That one looked especially great.
Yeah, I actually really like how that one turned out. I mean, it's Halloween, right? So there's a vampire now. Why not? Fuck it.
You tweeted a picture of that, right? We'll retweet that so everybody can see it.
But like Hood Slam does a yearly, they do a show every first Friday of the month, but they do extra ones as well. And they always do one kind of near Halloween called Blood Slam. And like Blood Slam, actually the concept of Blood Slam is kind of great and they did this the first 2 years. And they kind of did it this year too, but like not as much, I feel like, where they gear the show as it's not a wrestling show, it's like a horror movie, and the wrestling is like spots in the movie, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
So
explain a little bit.
So the first year that I did Count Chocula for them was they were doing this story where it was like these two people, or maybe it was more than two. It was a group of people and they were out. It was Halloween night, right? Like every horror movie kind of starts, and all of a sudden they're being stalked by this shadowy figure that sends out different monsters to try to kill them, and the characters kind of would get killed off as the show went. So in that show, the first match was there was the shadowy figure, and the joke ended up being, I think, that the shadowy figure was the what's his name from Twilight. The sparkly vampire dude.
Yeah, Edward.
Yeah, that was like the joke at the end. But but he's this shadowy figure trying to kill off these people. So he sends out this monster that he found lurking, in Transylvania, and it's the scariest monster you've ever seen. He's gonna come out. So I come out as fucking Count Chocula and I'm gonna kill them, but before I can, I get stopped by Batman who's Mexican Batman.
Okay.
And we wrestle, and Batman ends up beating me, kind of like what we did in our show. We had a silver spoon, so he just stabbed me a bunch and celebrates. And then at the end of it, I did like the Undertaker sit up, and I like bite his neck, and he bleeds
that's
everywhere
awesome.
and kill him, and the people run off, and that's the end, and they would go on to the next bit. So it's kind of a really neat way to do a wrestling show, in the sense that
that's interesting.
It's one big
storyline. Yeah.
And it's just for that show. And I thought that was really fucking cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
There was a few Gershers actually that night when the vampires were biting people. There was blood.
Yeah, well, fake blood's pretty easy to make. The trick to making it, though, is making it so it doesn't stain. There's a couple ways to do that. You can make it with like dishwasher soap, but that's kind of gross. I used to know the guar recipe, but then I had forgotten it. But then I'd looked up this one, and I found it was what the San Francisco Opera uses. And so
for blood?
Yeah, they would do this show that had a lot of fake blood, but because they have to do
grand
a show,
guignol, if you know what I mean.
they have to do a show every night, so you have to be able to clean out the costumes and clean off the stage pretty quick and easy. So what you do for anyone listening who wants to make their own fake blood?
No, this is great. This is a Halloween app. This is what we're talking about.
This is exactly what I would recommend.
Helpful hints.
You need to get a bunch of that Caro corn syrup,
right?
The lighter stuff.
Get the white.
Get that, and then get some chocolate sauce, like just the not sauce, but the syrup.
Hershey's,
put in your
Hershey
milk.
syrup. Yeah.
Get yourself some red food coloring and some yellow food coloring, because the red makes it a little too dark, and the yellow kind of changes the color a little bit.
Yeah.
You'll need cornstarch, and then you'll need Coffee Mate. And Coffee Mate's kind of the real key, because Coffee Mate apparently is what makes it wash out.
Wait, what is Coffee Mate?
It's a coffee creamer.
Yeah, it's powdered coffee.
Oh, like the non-dairy creamer.
Stuff that tastes like sand.
Yeah.
It's also a testament to how you should not consume it, because it is like a friggin' petrochemical.
It's really good for making fake blood.
Wow.
And so you mix it all together. If I remember correctly, you mix the cornstarch with cold water and the Coffee Mate with hot water. But you may need to reverse that, because I keep getting them confused. Mix it all together, boil it, and then just kind of let it cool and put it in something, and it'll cool down and kind of congeal, and you'll get that. You'll add the red food coloring, and then add some yellow just to get the color right.
Okay.
Because if you add red, it ends up looking a little almost too pinkish.
Right. And it's edible.
Yeah, and it's edible. It's sticky.
Yeah.
But like it'll wash out. I mean, don't like wait a week to do it, but it'll wash out.
Right.
Which is always the key.
So when you're making masks, like, do you have like an inspiration, like a movie wise or anything like that? Like, what would you say is like sort of the best practical makeup effects in a horror movie, or do you have any?
I mean, my original inspiration for a lot of this was the old Godzilla movies.
Okay,
is that how you got into this sort of stuff?
There was a combination of things. I really liked the old Godzilla movies, but I was also a big fan of Gwar when I was.
So that must have been really cool then to get to work with that guy.
It was neat, and I definitely really took the time to bug the shit out of him to learn it.
Right? Yeah. Well, hey, got to.
But there's a lot of those old movies that have those practical effects that I just really enjoy. I was just watching friggin' Pumpkinhead the other night, and that's actually, I believe, by Stan Winston.
Yeah. I was gonna say he's kind of the icon of all of this,
which you can look up his school online and stuff, and it's pretty good if you want to learn how to do stuff that way too. I mean, a lot of it's kind of trial and error at a certain point, but I started out really with the old Godzilla movies, and I remember when I started wanting to get into wrestling, I remember discovering Kaiju Big Battle and really enjoying that.
Explain what that is.
Kaiju Big Battle was a kind of pseudo wrestling show where the conceit was the wrestlers weren't people, they were like giant monsters.
Okay.
And they would wrestle in a wrestling ring with like these shitty cardboard buildings everywhere and stuff.
Uh-huh.
The thing about it was they weren't the best. They like you know they're these crappy costumes that you can't really see out of, or you can't really do a whole
Fight
lot.
in. Yeah,
so it's pretty sloppy and kind of shitty and slow, but it's also fucking really great at the same time.
Where do they do this show?
They don't really do it anymore.
It's like it was like Boston based, right, or something.
My
East Coast.
Yeah, my understanding it's Pennsylvania based, and it was the same people that did Chikara.
Oh, okay,
it,
yeah.
But they kind of stopped running at a certain point. But the weird thing is, they were just at TwitchCon in Long Beach last weekend.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
So I guess they pull out the costumes and dust them off every so often for something.
There was a really funny thing about story on, because where I heard about Kaiju Big Battle was on ESPN.
Yeah.
So they had a thing on E60 where they have a lot of the more serious news stories about, because the whole premise of the show is essentially they're serious sports writers that are associated, not like Screaming A. Smith or you know, Skip Bayless. It's like the serious ones meet up at a table and they're like, all right, what are the big stories in sports? And then they pitch the stories to each other. It's just like, it'll go something like this. And then it's just like the story. And they're always like the really serious ones. And then I think it was Jeremy Schaap was just like, y'all know about wrestling, right? And you know about monster movies.
I've never heard of it.
and he shows, and the guys, to their credit, the Kaiju Big Battle guys were not just sitting there like, yeah, my name is Dave and I run this. They're just like, there are aliens coming down from the skies and they're wrestling in the wrestle row of the Kaiju Big Battle. And it's just like, it's so in character. And at the end, you just see like Jamil Hill and like Michael Smith just sitting there just with their mouths agape like, what the fuck was that? Like, what is this?
Godzilla movies I always thought were kind of like wrestling matches in a way. Like the politics of King Kong versus Godzilla where neither one wanted to put the other guy over.
Yeah. Actually, no, that movie, the movie was about like, Inoki versus Ali, essentially.
Yeah.
It was an allegory.
To be fair, I mean, my ultimate goal would be to make a Kaiju Big Battle style show. I wouldn't want to make the exact same thing because I don't want to like dick ride them too hard.
Right.
But I mean, I really like building this stuff, and I mean, I like wrestling too, but I'd much rather do that shit. And I think it could work. Lucha Vavoom is a thing, and it's barely wrestling and very successful. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like a Kaiju Big Battle thing could work really well, especially in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
because
funny
it's so
that-
self-referential.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
it's funny that was Pennsylvania based. That seems like such an LA sort of thing, actually. I don't know.
You would think, but LA's got kind of a weird wrestling scene, and I wouldn't call it a dead zone for wrestling, but it's definitely not as like happening as like the East Coast is.
Right.
So I don't know. There's plenty of really cool wrestlers out here, and it's a shame that they don't get more exposure than they do.
Right.
But
it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's just like the East Coast is so compressed and so compact that if you like are big in, even if you're big in like Michigan or something like that, you could drive to Philadelphia pretty easily, as opposed to like if you're on the West Coast, it's really tough to go out to the East Coast for any shows. I mean, the furthest out, it's like, there isn't a big wrestling scene in Utah or something like that.
Yeah, there is some of that. I mean, there's you got the LA wrestlers, and well, let's just call them the SoCal wrestlers and lump San Diego in there too.
Yeah.
And then you got the NorCal guys, and there's some stuff in like Washington. I mean, and I'm sure there's some small stuff in the other states, but
What promotions have you worked for, Derek? I know I'd seen you in CWFH Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, I worked for them a little bit. I worked for Freak Show and Hood Slam, obviously, and I still work for Hood Slam. Briefly worked for Future Stars of Wrestling, I think it was called, in Las Vegas. There's a promotion out near Phoenix called Party Hard Wrestling. I worked for them
What
before.
was Party Hard Wrestling?
Party Hard Wrestling is kind of like Ersatz Hood Slam in a sense.
Okay.
Where they were trying to be like an alternative style wrestling show.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not just that same old wrestling you watch on TV. We're cool, club style wrestling, I guess would be the right thing to say.
Their GM Andrew WK puts all the matches together,
right? I mean, I'm thinking that's where the name comes from, and I think actually Andrew WK did put them over on Twitter once.
Oh wow!
The guy who runs it's a pretty cool guy. He's like a musician or something. I don't remember now, but it was a pretty cool promotion. There were some cool people out there, and they do a show at the Nile Theater. Out there. It's kind of in its infancy, so it's growing, but they get a decent crowd and it's fun. I expected it to be a little more like Hood Slam. I think they're still trying to find their voice in a sense. Right. But it was fun. They're a good show. I'd recommend if you live in Arizona, I'd go check them out.
Okay, we got some listeners in Arizona.
But they're trying to be kind of like a different kind of wrestling too, which I think is good. I think wrestling needs to be a little different, especially out like here, because you can't compete with the East Coast because that's where all the cool wrestling is. And the biggest wrestling promotion here is PWG.
Yeah.
But PWG doesn't book local guys.
Right. Yeah.
They fly in the famous indie talent. And that's what a lot of the shows out here do, is it's just famous indie talent from elsewhere. Lucha Underground's the other big show in the area, but they don't, again, really book local talent.
Yeah.
So
sounds like the problem with being in any sort of entertainment.
It sounds like comedy.
It really is. Wrestling and comedy is very similar, honestly. So
it really is.
But my thing has always been, if you can't be better than the people that are the top,
be different.
No, that's the key, because you can do something that appeals to people that are not necessarily wrestling fans. You can get people that are outside of it that are just into like silly stuff, or crazy stuff.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you think about wrestling, what do you think about? Like, when you think about wrestling that you like, what is it that you guys actually think about?
I'm serious old school, so I think of like Memphis and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, it's what I started out watching, which was early 90s WCW.
Right.
Mine is, sadly, genuinely, when I just close my eyes and just think of wrestling generally, it's Road Dogg and Badass Billy Gunn putting Terry Funk and Mankind into a dumpster and pushing them off the stage.
But my point is, though, is you guys all think of the nostalgia part of wrestling.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of wrestling's appeal, I think.
Exactly. Yeah. That is exactly what
But I mean, a lot of the stuff that Goodnight's a big fan of Memphis, right? And there was some goofy stuff in Memphis.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
Right? Because they just wanted to get a lot of stuff that
they wanted the same arenas every week. So they were trying to draw people. So they just went crazy.
Yeah, we'll just have a wrestling Ninja Turtle and just go fast and loose with trademark infringement. Sure,
WWF had a tag team wrestling.
Yeah. It was like Dwayne Gill and some
other guys.
Yeah. And I mean, when I started watching wrestling, it was like, you had like awesome wrestlers, but I remember like being a big fan of Arachnaman.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was just like, oh, dude, this is Arachnaman. And my dad just being like, you really think that he's going to beat Stunning Steve Austin? I'm like, come on. He shoots webs out of his hands.
I mean, he was one of the Armstrong brothers.
Yeah, I know. So even though he's a superhero, he's still got the Armstrong curse,
But that's the thing, though. Most people that when they think of wrestling, they think of nostalgia. And I'm not even talking just wrestling fans. Most people that don't like wrestling now, I guarantee probably at some point in their lives did to a certain degree. People especially like our age. I mean, I think we're all collectively around the same age.
People in comedy especially.
Exactly.
Wrestling, I think, too, was one of those things that it's popularly went in waves like that. 80s and 90s. And then before that, there was one in the 50s.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like there's a lot of room for that show that plays on that nostalgia factor. Because Hulk Hogan is stupid, but he's fucking great at the same time, right?
Yeah.
The Macho Man is not a person you'd want to meet in real life, but Jesus Christ, watching him on TV is amazing.
When he first came out, people forget this because he just became the Macho Man, but he was scary intense. Yeah. It was like he was going to like a balloon or something, ready to pop at any minute.
I still remember there's this one interview with him and Lanny Poffo when they were wrestling in Memphis, and Lanny Poffo's wearing like the suit of armor. Oh, he's carrying the rapier, and he's just like, "We stand for honor
purity
and honor, rock and roll, and all that jargon." And he's like doing this thing, and Macho Man's just hitting himself in the head with it. Just gets
hits himself with the chair, and he goes,
"We're sexy beasts." Yeah, I know.
right after Lanny's going, "We stand for purity and all these good things.
And Randy Savage is just the sweatiest man you've ever seen, and his eyes are just like his eyes are squinted, but they're the thing where it's like your eyes are squinted, but they're like wide fucking open, you know. And
that was a big deal too when Savage came to Memphis too, because they did it like an invasion angle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, because like his dad ran sort of like
the Outlaw up in Kentucky. Yeah, Angela Pop, and they used to be like a 3-part thing too, with him as the manager and the two Poffos as Poffomania.
Yeah, and his dad looked like his dad.
Poffomania,
his dad looked like a vampire.
He talked like one. These are my sons. This is Lonnie, and this is
and he had like because he had like the Eddie Munster hair kind of, and he had like the big like collar on the jacket that said 6033 on it.
Yep.
So he looked like Count Dracula kind of. I'm a Count.
So you said you were into Gwar growing up. Like, where? First of all, where did you grow up? Are you from California, or did you come from?
No, I grew up in North Carolina.
Oh, no shit. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay.
Isn't Guar from Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were all VCU students.
Yeah,
right?
They used to play. I went to VCU, so they used
There
to
you go.
play in this place that was like there was a comic book store and like a Mexican joint there. And this is when I was there, and it was 20 years ago.
So you grew up there, and what age did you start getting into Gwar?
Probably like high school.
Oh, okay.
Like when I was allowed to pick my own music and then just have to listen to like classic rock in the car.
Okay.
When I was driving with my parents. Right around when they started inventing CD players.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
And
fair.
I remember most of my my friends were like, "Hey, check out this Blink-182 CD." I was like, fuck that. Check out this band that's like weird space monsters.
And decapitates people on stage.
Yeah, well, their stage show is one of the most amazing stage shows I had ever seen.
Yeah.
In fact, I went to when they were last in town a couple of years ago when they played at the House of Blues right before Dave Brockie died. I saw them, and their live show has always been really fucking good,
crazy. Yeah,
it's to me, it's what every live show should like strive to be,
right.
And it's great too because we caught a couple of the the opening bands. And the security guys were pretty like on point about getting people to stop, getting too rowdy. And then Gwar hits the stage and they just gave the fuck up. They're like, nope. Plus, Gwar shoots fluids at the crowd the whole time.
Yeah.
The security guys were just all like, nah, I don't want anything to do with this.
Worse than Gallagher.
Yeah, they are way worse than Gallagher.
Well, I guess I was going to ask, like, were you into like horror films and monster movies and things like that as a child? Like, what was that was your jam? And then Gwar was like,
yeah, it's right up my stuff was kind of right up my alley. I mean, like, I wasn't the biggest horror fan in the world. I was more into like crappy action movies.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because my dad didn't really give a shit about ratings, so I was watching R-rated movies since I was like 4 years old.
Oh, okay.
And like, so that was the stuff that I was really into, and they had their own kind of cheesy special effects. And,
what's like the number one in your pantheon in that category?
I couldn't tell you what number one is, but I definitely remember watching Commando.
I was going to say Commando. We've talked about on this show before. Is just
Is that the one that's dedicated to the brave soldiers fighting for the Mujahideen?
No, that's Rambo 3.
Rambo 3. Okay.
Because he works with them.
Yeah, he fights with the Mujahideen.
Yeah.
No, Commando's the one.
Osama bin Laden?
Commando's the one with child Alyssa Milano.
Oh yeah.
And Schwarzer, he's dead tired.
Yep. Yeah. And the shittiest fucking villain.
The guy that looks like the Jack Freddie Mercury.
Yeah. Like not even jacked. Like Freddie Mercury, who probably was jacked in like college, but now he's in his 30s and he still kind of works out occasionally. But
yeah,
it's what Freddie Mercury would look like now if he didn't pass
pretty
away.
much.
Yeah, his name is Bennett. What an intimidating name.
He has the mesh shirt too, which is not intimidating whether you're him or whether you're Ron Wood.
And the other one I really liked too was Predator. Predator was
I was hoping we would get to that because that's Stan Winston, correct? That designed the Predator thing.
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
And the costume that made it to the screen is actually version 2.0.
Yep.
because they shot
First version looked like shit.
Yeah, and we'll have to put a picture of this on our Twitter just so you can see it. We're at the Goods Pod. That first Predator suit looks really fucking stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks
it's
like
fucking awful. It is fucking shitty.
it just looks like a gacked Geico gecko. The first time I ever heard of Guar, they were on the Jerry Springer show.
Yep.
Yeah, and they did the whole thing where they did the thing about my kid listens to obscene music.
And
So they had-
Marilyn
they had-
Manson was busy that week.
And this is like full Jerry Springer with a mullet, if A's Jerry
Well,
Springer.
the first time I heard of Guar too was on an expose by a TV preacher named Johnny Ankerberg, who was doing a several part series on rock and roll music and the youth.
And how it's killing our
Was
children.
this like local to Virginia?
No. This was like on TBN.
Oh, okay.
It was one of those kind of pastors. It might have been
remember
based
this
out of
guy.
there, though. You remember that? And he had a whole series on rock and roll things like backmasking and rock and roll records, heavy metal and the youth.
Oh, yeah.
And he had Guar up on there, among many other things. George Harrison.
Yep.
All these
Like,
other
it
threats.
ran the
society.
gamut for sure.
It ran the gamut of every kind of rock music you possibly
at
imagine.
the end of this thing with the Guar on Jerry Springer, they show Jerry Springer at a Guar show, and they feed him to the giant worm.
Yep.
And Jerry Springer has like. He has like the washed out jeans and the matching like denim shirt and the mullet. And he's just like kind of doing this like he's afraid. And it's like, dude, you're a guy that paid a prostitute with a check. Like, and you're gonna act like you're
Don't act like
afraid
you're
of
above
some.
this.
So
He's selling it.
These are
You gotta
your
sell for
kind
the
of people.
monster.
So growing up, did you have any fun like Halloween memories?
I mean, I remember we, as kids, we trick or treated till we were way too old, probably, because it's like the one night of the year you get free candy,
Right,
as much
yeah.
as you can
When was
stand.
the last time you trick or treated?
I mean, it's been a while. At
Well,
this
I know
point.
that, but I mean, like, how old were you?
I was probably in middle school
Yeah,
to a certain degree. Yeah.
I feel like I went my freshman year of high school. I think that was the last time, and
Oh,
then
yeah, it's free candy,
Yeah,
guys.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I liked the whole thing, but there was a certain point in middle school where society just made
Yeah.
you stop.
You know
it.
what?
My
frown
parents
upon
cracked a whip when
Hey,
I was 10.
listen,
I
only
think.
Wow.
Yeah.
only good bar can judge me.
It's true.
Put that on my grave.
Was there any particular costumes you remember that were good?
I mean, they probably weren't good, but I remember one year I went as Casey Jones from the Ninja Turtles, and the following year I couldn't think of a good costume, so I sort of recycled it in a way and went as like the ghost of Mickey Mantle because he died. So that was probably a good one.
Nice.
The ghost of Mickey Mantle, yeah, because he had died, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, fuck, I got all this baseball shit. Why don't I just paint my face white?"
So you didn't go with the Warriors. You just went with
Yeah,
the
well,
ghost
it
of
ended up
Mickey
looking more like the guy, the gang from the Warriors,
Yeah.
the Baseball Furies. But then we beat the shit out
But
of the guy with a
it's
bat.
topical, you know?
Yeah,
Tropical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
they were
was-
about violence. Old Mick was about, drinking and having a
and
good
violence,
time.
probably.
Yeah, drinking and golf. And
Yeah. So, and we always would go to the rich neighborhood. There was a part of town that had more money, and we were like, well, let's not stay in our shitty poor neighborhood. Let's
Right. Well, that's the classic.
Yeah,
I
let's
mean,
roll over
more
the
money
rich
for
kids.
candy. Just makes sense.
The problem is now they gate those neighborhoods off, so it's harder to get to. But
Oh, out there. I mean, probably tonight. It's we're releasing this on Halloween. There's a whole family just waiting by a gate
just for someone to drive by.
for something to drive by.
It's a lot like my day job.
Go, go, go!
The gate's open. Go.
Storm the gates, kids! And then like 50 kids run in to get the good candy.
but it's never like in those neighborhoods. There really is no good.
No,
candy.
there is
that's,
no-
That's the myth.
There
That's-
can be.
That's what growing up is you find out there never was any full size Snickers.
No. No, that's not true. My fucking dad gives out full size Snickers.
Like the actual ones you buy at the gas station.
Yeah. He goes down to Walmart and they got like the big packs of they're just full of them.
Whoa.
He gives those out. He's like, every so often we get a guy who's like 35 comes up and he's like, "Hey, trick or treat," and they're like, "Yeah, get the fuck off the porch." Like,
you were the one with the Snickers.
yeah, pretty much just like that. It's not even really dressed as a costume unless the costume is a hobo.
He's homeless. He just has no shirt.
What are you for Halloween?
Naked.
I'm naked Midian.
Drunk and naked.
I'm the can man. But
Give me your candy.
there was a guy in our neighborhood growing up. And he was just a guy with just like he was like in his 50s, and he had like a pencil thin mustache, and he just had a big wad of money.
They don't really let those guys do trick or treating.
Yeah, no, but he wasn't like
I think there's a law against them.
He wasn't a creepy guy, right? He was just like one of those guys that just like, betted on horses all the time and
I
stuff
like
like
this
that.
guy's
One of these
style.
guys, that's just like, he might be like the bookie or something for the neighborhood.
Pencil thin mustache.
Yeah. And he, one of those guys that smells like Brute.
Yeah,
That spray on
classy.
Brute. And he just had a big wad of money, and he would
And
just
his
give,
name was-
Classy.
that was his name too.
yeah, and he just gave the kids like dollar bills and stuff like that.
All right, I read this guy is awesome.
Yeah, he just had the water. He just like, here you go, kids. Don't spend it all in one place. Like what that means, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, my grandpa.
you're gonna buy his boat. Like,
My grandpa keeps being like, "Hey, don't take any wooden nickels." I'm like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And apparently, it actually is a real thing because when he was a kid growing up in the Depression, people would give out wooden nickels.
It was way big. I used to ask my mama, why do they always bite
Yeah.
the coin in the cartoons?
Yeah, it's to make sure it's not wooden. Yeah, it's
things
where-
we can't relate to because we don't have wooden money here.
Yeah. Did
know?
you ever have the person who would leave out the bowl of pennies?
Yeah, that was that person.
that sucks.
They tasted terrible.
That person got those pennies just thrown at their house. At that fucking point.
Always.
We were bad children.
You just take a handful and then just wing them at the windows.
Like, fuck this guy.
Did anybody ever get a razor blade?
No, because it's not a real thing. It happened
know,
to,
but
it
every
happened
year
to
they would
one
test.
kid once.
Yeah.
And I think it was his own parents that did it.
Yeah, because they were trying to kill him.
Yeah, because they believed in Jesus too much or some shit.
They
I
were
don't
like
know.
Munchausen by proxy or something.
Having razor blades and that's metal as hell, man. That's all. That's true. That's true. Hey, just, hey, kids, here's some razor blade. Like, who gives away candy bars that are big enough that you can put a razor
Well,
blade?
it's not only that. Who takes the time to take the candy out of the candy wrapper, slip the razor blade into the candy, seal it back up, and then give it out? That's like a lot of work. And
Yeah.
It's hard to gimmick a candy bar like that.
Like you got to be like a serious serial killer to have that kind of commitment. Which I mean, I guess if you have that level of commitment, you probably are. A serial killer.
Yeah. I mean, there are probably weirdos that do that sort of thing, but there's the one thing where it's just like you always hear the stories, like, and this has become kind of the de rigueur on Twitter, but like the local news, there's always the thing where it's just like they're putting drugs in the candy, like they're
Right.
putting
I
cocaine.
want to trick or treat wherever
they're
they
putting
trick or treat.
expensive street drugs.
Do you know
in the-
where that is?
Yeah, I know they're
Yeah.
putting expensive street drugs in the candy. It's like, they're giving away ecstasy, and it's like,
Well, they give it to you free, and then you got to pay.
You just want the kids to have a really good time.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
who has a bunch of ecstasy laying around, and it's just like,
How dealers
you know what? I feel like being a prankster.
Well, I got all this extra ecstasy laying around. Maybe if I put it into some candy,
Yeah, I know.
those little kids will get all hopped up on goofballs.
I got all this ecstasy, and my wife's coming home from the business trip tomorrow.
Gotta get rid of it.
I gotta get rid of all this ecstasy.
Oh, what do I do? What do I do?
I got 100 ganja goo balls and oh no, 2 hours to get rid of them.
What do I do?
Oh wait, it's Halloween.
And I got this pile of empty Jolly Rancher wrappers hanging out in my. All right.
Why does that sitcom not exist? The sitcom about the shitty drug dealer guy.
The world's worst drug dealer.
Yeah, exactly.
Glazing and cherry.
I used to work in local TV news. And
What?
yeah,
Where at? Was that in North Carolina as well?
I worked for one in North Carolina in Raleigh, and then I worked for it was actually in Durham actually.
Uh-huh.
Then I worked for you guys don't know where any of these fucking towns are, and I worked for another one in this place in the middle of nowhere on the Tennessee-Virginia border.
Okay.
And I was
Oh,
worked in local
Davy
news.
Crockett country up there. Bristol?
Yes, Bristol, Virginia, Tennessee.
Hey, all right.
That's exactly where it was.
Birthplace of recorded country music.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What was some of like the good stories that you guys covered? What did you do first of all? Were you working like camera producer?
I was a camera guy.
Oh, okay.
Like I was the in studio camera guy.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, yeah. Oh, so you got to sit through the boring shit. You didn't get to go out in the field.
Yeah.
And
No, I didn't get to
interview
do that.
fucking weirdos.
Chase people
No,
into their
I didn't-
houses.
I didn't get to go interview meth heads. I remember the big story when I was in Bristol was they because like Bristol, there was Bristol, but there was also two other little towns that sort of made up the metropolitan area. So
Johnson City.
Johnson City.
That's where my Uncle Jim lives.
Yep.
Rivers
and then-
knows the area well.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then Kingsport. is the other
Kingsport,
one.
Johnson City, and that's my Uncle Jim lives right at the base of Buffalo Mountain.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
they call-
then he might know this story.
Yeah, they call that the doo-doo triangle.
Uncle Rivers, Uncle, if you're listening. Pat said
I
it,
mean,
not
I
me.
don't know your uncle, but he might remember the story. It might hit close to home. The big story when I was there was they discovered in Johnson City the local secret gay sex hangout, which was this. And okay,
Secret no more.
yeah, it wasn't a secret anymore. It was this. And this
Tonight at 11.
yeah,
The local
exactly.
gay sex hangout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was called, and this is why I never hear this word right because it's become a word that people use pretty commonly now. It's
Yeah.
like it's a part of the pop culture lexicon, but it was called the man cave.
Okay.
This
yeah.
is the first time I had ever heard the word man cave. So now every
They
time
might have meant it as something else.
no, they did. They meant it as a place where men go and have gay sex secretly in this local park.
right where bears would. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I thought that might have meant, the man cave in the back, if you know what I mean.
No, it was like a thicket. It was like an overgrown like
It was outside.
thicket it was outside. It was in a park. They had like this big park there, and it's like this overgrown thicket that had sort of like you kind of go inside of it.
Okay.
Like a cave.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So they called it the man cave.
Okay.
'Cause that's where all the secret gay dudes would go to have secret gay sex because obviously it's in the South and we don't like them types around.
Yeah,
here.
and it's just they had that like where I grew up, and that was a big thing on the news because there was this park called Hoo Hoo Park. That was its actual name, and it's just like, and it always became the thing where it was.
Oh, we
just,
don't deal in hoo-ha's, just hoo-hoo.
No, it was just like all these. It's just like all these guys. It's just like it's the South, and they're
Yeah.
Come on in, hoo-hoo. I
They're-
made tea.
they're just they're not allowed to actually be themselves. They have to be channeled into some life that they don't
Yep.
want to have because it's not them and stuff. And
Yep.
they just like they need to find a place. And it was like the Hoo Hoo Park, and but it was just like all that, and it was always on the news.
Na, 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 na.
It was like always on the news that they would have stories about that. Yeah.
Yep. No, it's the same thing. They discovered this man cave.
And it becomes like a 2-week, 3-week.
It went on for months.
Yeah, like
Rivers is making me
series.
laugh with his hoo-hoo the
And
whole
they always
time.
do like horrible stuff where they're just like, maybe we should get their like license plate numbers and figure out where they live.
Like,
and
no, don't do that.
Because local news is so like scandalous and just horrible.
Because
Like,
they need something to keep
Yeah.
people interested. Local news is literally shit between weather updates. Like, that's all it is.
Hoo-hoo found a way.
but
We also once had a lady do they called them a live shot.
Yeah.
Where they would be like at a place and she's standing there and she's like, yeah, and this is whatever the hell her name was live from. And she says the wrong place. And the reason we knew it was the wrong place was because behind her was a sign that said the actual name of the place she was at. But she didn't. I even think she turned and looked and still got it wrong. Local, it's, if your dream is to be a reporter and you end up in local news, man, I understand. We all have to settle in life.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's
best of luck to you.
You could find yourself going out with Superman.
Well,
Yeah, right. We all got to live life. We all got to pay the bills. We all got to start somewhere, and then accept that we're not
I
gonna
was
be our
my
president.
favorite was that I probably told this story on the
real
podcast.
quick. I was gonna say Buffalo Mountain. Very important moments in my life happened on Buffalo Mountain.
Yeah.
You found your hoo-hoo?
No, it's hoo-hoo related. First time the first time I ever peed on a fire.
Hey.
I was with my dad and my Uncle Jim and my grandfather, and then we all took turns and pissed out a fire that we built on Buffalo Mountain. So it was a very Buffalo Mountain. I mean, there'll be there should be a plaque there commemorating
That moment.
This is like a landmark in my life. Yeah, the first time
Plaque
ever,
of the back of
first
you
time
and
you
your
ever
two
peed on a
uncles.
campfire. You'll never forget it.
Have you ever heard the old joke? What do you call a guy driving off of Buffalo Mountain with a truckload of sheep?
No.
You call him a pimp.
Oh, okay.
Hillbillies.
I was gonna go polygamist was
class.
where I was headed
I mean,
with that.
I don't know if you guys get it, but hillbillies
Yeah.
have sex with farm animals.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Have you guys heard this?
Yeah.
You guys aware of this?
Yeah.
Well, they have tight little
And
woolly
that area
holes.
is the proper hillbilly area. I mean, that's the
It's
area
in
where
the
they-
hills.
Yeah, yeah.
Actual hillbillies.
They are actual hillbillies.
But I've probably told the story before on the podcast, and if I have, it's topical. So let's just. My favorite local news story was they had this thing where Florida, where I grew up, like Florida's a weird place where there's sexual repression, but also sexual liberation, right? So there was this one story that was coming about people that were swingers that had a house that they all swung in, and in the neighborhood there's a bunch of old people. And they weren't into this, like, debauched and depraved hedonistic lifestyle. So they started like picketing in front of the house and like getting license plates and trying to figure out who is going and like as consenting.
swinging?
As consenting adults who was swinging. So the news came out there and they were talking to some guy and it's just like, they're totally ruining the neighborhood, how they're engaging in this depraved action. And then right as he's complaining about it, in the background, there's this huge explosion. And it was a meth house that exploded in their neighborhood. Oh my God. Right as it happened.
Oh, shit.
It was so fitting,
Maybe the swingers working as a front for the meth lab.
Or they were distracting the meth. The meth guy was probably just like, great, these swingers are here. Now nobody will
Now nobody will
pay attention.
notice.
Yeah, all these weird smells and match booklets hanging out.
Well, that's just an illustrated point that we learn in the Bible. Don't talk about the the splinter in someone else's eye when you got a rod in your own. You know what I mean? Yeah. I guess we learned Jesus is the way. No, I was actually gonna say
I'm with you on that, Rivers.
I talked to a guy from San Antonio who was in the oil business. He worked in oil, so fucking loaded. Lived in San Antonio, and he bought his home in his neighborhood. In his neighborhood, from what I could gather, most people had rented, but he was the one person that owned the house, and so he was pissed that like the homeowners association was actually making him follow the rules, which is to not have any like crazy extravagant Halloween decorations.
Don't have any fun.
But he has ungodly fucking amounts of money, so he was just like, yeah, I'm trying to decorate this house for the kids, okay? And when I have Halloween, bro, I don't fuck around. I got like 15 clowns that are like, they are all motorized and they're stabbing in the bushes, and I've got like the whole house is covered in cobwebs. I give out the best fucking candy. Like, I am the best at fucking Halloween, and I do the same, and I do the same shit for fucking Christmas too, and they fucking hate me about that. So I've just gotten it bigger.
Well, I'd hate it too if he has clowns with knives out in his yard for
I
Christmas.
just get the clowns with knives and they're stabbing and they're wearing reindeer ears.
Motherfucker.
I'm the best at Halloween.
No, he was like so
I can appreciate
upset.
a guy who doesn't fuck around for Halloween.
Well, he was so upset because
This
he was just talking about all the stuff that he'd bought, and then like he was
serious
gonna
fucking business.
Well, he was stepping it up for this year because he said that he was buying like all of these smoke machines to specifically to piss off the HOA. Where he was like, yeah, well, they got mad at lights, but now I'm just gonna have fog coming down the fucking street. See if they
I get it, man. Fuck the police.
I love that it's a guy who has taken his money and has decided to use it to make the dumbest stand of all time, and I kind of love that.
And it
That's
sounds
the
like-
point of being a homeowner.
And being a stupidly rich is like, yeah, I'm
and it
going to
sounds like-
wage
and it's-
war against people that.
And most of the people in the neighborhood are renting, so it's not like he probably could buy a more expensive house.
Of course he
So
could.
he's freeing up more income to be discretionary, so he can be completely obnoxious.
Exactly.
Which is what some people in this country think is liberty.
I get it,
I
man.
kind of like this guy.
Yeah.
If you go to his place, man, it's going to be a good old Halloween. You get lots of candy.
Yeah.
This dude is kind of my hero.
Well, no, he's a nice guy. And then for Christmas, he was talking about how he does the thing where he like covers the entire house in lights. And he was like, yeah, it takes me, so I take down all my Halloween shit on November 1st. And then it takes me about 3 weeks to put up my Christmas shit. So I'm finished by, I was like, what? And so he said he starts putting up the Halloween stuff right when his kids go back to school, which is like early September. So it
Does he
takes him-
move really slow or something?
No,
It just
he
takes him
has
a long
that
time?
much stuff. Because I was asking him, like, I was like, this is great. I want to know everything. And he was just talking about how he like bought all of this crazy shit for Halloween. He goes,
So everybody in the neighborhood's like, it's August when the clowns start showing up on this guy's yard.
yeah. And he goes, he's like, oh yeah, man, shit wouldn't fit my house anymore. So I had to buy like a separate storage facility behind my house. So he has a whole.
Which is probably not up to homeowners association
No,
codes
of course not.
whatsoever.
And he's got this whole other place just to store his decorations.
He's got a big middle finger paint on the side of
It's
it.
kind of how he was telling about.
It's like 17 non-moving cars with no tires on them.
He's got a big couch on his front porch.
Well, no, what he said he did for Christmas was he's like, bro, I fucking cover every inch. And he was like swearing in front of his children. That was my favorite part. This is like a family. And he was just like, bro,
Like he's
cover-
aggressively holiday oriented.
Yeah. No, I appreciated that. As a guy who I love Halloween.
He aggressively likes it. I can appreciate that.
And he goes,
fuck homeowners association.
but he goes,
right?
yeah, and this whole thing, I realized, like, this is just like a vendetta against some lady who came to his house, like, I don't like these clowns in your yard. And she was like, fuck you, I'm going to buy more.
Oh, this means war.
Well, I don't like your fucking face.
Yeah.
Get off my property.
I'm going to buy 50 clowns. Fuck you, lady.
You don't like
Probably I'll
clowns?
stab you with some clowns.
It's called the First Amendment.
And
like
the
clowns?
second.
That's what some people.
clowns.
the right to clowns.
Yeah, that's what some people think.
It's called the Third Amendment. I have the right to quarter clowns in my yard.
That's against the
Yeah,
Constitution.
I got a Fourth Amendment. You can't search my shit.
I got an 11th
So stop
Amendment.
searching and being trifling.
do you think there's a moment right before he's like they come for his shit? So like this has gone on for years in my head, right? And
Yeah.
they're gonna come for his shit. So he's like, well, this means fucking war. Then he's sitting in his house painting on like war paint. And it's just a sad clown instead.
for Christmas, he goes, he's just like, bro, for fucking Christmas, I got so many lights. Every inch of my house is covered in lights, and I got this badass sound system, and I program the lights. I bought this fancy computer program. It takes me months to program this shit. And I have it programmed to play all the Christmas songs, but then I also hooked it up to play fucking Slayer and shit. So the house is coordinated.
Wait a minute.
This is the guy you
I think
see
I've
on-
seen this guy on the internet.
That's the thing. It's not the same guy because I thought it was the same thing because I have also seen that. He saw it on the internet.
Yeah.
And the reason he did it was he was just like, well, the first year I was doing Christmas tunes and they bitched about that. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to play some music I fucking like. And then I saw this dude had his shit hooked up to Slayer. I was like, that's fucking cool.
That's fucking badass.
Yeah, so he just had it hooked up, and I was like, "This is you've given so much money to a guy who doesn't have shit to do. He just oversees an oil field.
Yeah.
That's his job. He owns the oil field. He goes there. He's like, well, looks good, and then goes home to fuck with the homeowners.
This
Well,
guy-
to be
this
fair,
guy
he
is
needs
simul-
a job that gives him a lot of time off so he can plan all that moving of things
Obviously,
into
it
his
takes up a
yard.
lot of
Yeah.
time.
It takes him at least half a year just
This
to
guy
set
is
these
simultaneously awesome and awful.
He's the best. and the
Yeah,
worst.
He's the best.
He's a
and the worst.
paradox, really.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's like the guy that is just like fills me with incredible joy, and he also fills me with incredible dread.
I know. He is. If consumerism came to life. So I wanted to end the show with a couple of lesser known.
I wanted to end the show with a fine wine.
Yeah, with a fine wine, with a couple of lesser known Halloween tunes. Yeah, so we've
Rivers, do you have these pumping out of your house with?
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Dry ice
now
and
this is the perfect time. So this is just one that I just straight up love. This is Fred Schneider, and the song is Monster.
This kind of has a demo on the Casio feel to it.
Totally. Well, all of his solo stuff does.
All right, this song's called Demo 7.
This song called Marimba.
Bossa Nova.
This song's called Dictionary.
In my pants, and it does a nasty dance when it moves in and out.
I remember this song.
Yeah.
I thought this wasn't on the album that had Rome.
What's that?
This wasn't on the album that had Rome.
No, this is solo. This is Fred Schneider solo. But yeah, so there's that one.
This song was the balls.
I love this song.
Will you take a look at that thing?
Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to play some Fred Schneider because he's always a lot of fun. But the main thing I wanted to get to was I was thinking about Bobby Boris Pickett, the man responsible for the Monster Mash, and what the fuck else did he do after that? Because everybody knows the Monster Mash. Obviously, it's ended up in every Halloween mix ever since when it came out, and he kind of did what Chubby Checker did. You know, he tried to bust out, but ended up going back to the well. So I have two songs that are basically a decade apart. So you got the Monster Mash from the 60s. This one is called Me and My Mummy, and it's from 1972. This is...
Yeah, I know.
Oh, this is when gimmicks turn sad.
I saw the figure of a mummy last night.
It's a doo-wop song in 1972. You know, the height of doo-wop.
Hey, Frank Zappa was making fun of doo-wop during that time. That's when Ruben and the Jets came
You know,
out.
you can't expect Boris Pickett to abandon his classic style.
Yeah.
He's not going to become Today just for everyone else.
Oh, I wouldn't be so sure.
I imagine this coming. This
He's
could
not going to rap, is he?
Oh, he might.
Yeah, because I'd
so-
imagine this song being like coming out of some sort of like blowfest that he had with like Phil Spector or something like that.
Yeah, so
I imagine this song probably sounds like the record they come up with the next month when they want to try to milk more money off the Monster Mash.
Well, I mean, this sounds more like the era Monster Mash came out in, right? But this is the early 70s. This is 1983. Bobby Boris Pickett, monster rap. He's trying to teach the monsters how to talk, and he's not having any success, so he instead teaches them how to rap.
Is this before or after Rappin' Rodney?
Probably be contemporaneous.
All right.
Notice the beat from Walk This Way at the beginning.
Backstreet Lover. Yeah.
Working in the lab late these nights with
Wait, he starts by saying, still working in the lab, which is the saddest
Late
little
these
part.
nights.
I'm still there.
This is a good beat.
This is pretty good. Sounds like Rockwell.
With eyes grown used to eerie sights, I created a monster who could dance and walk, but I couldn't teach him how to talk. My faithful assistant,
He's
that
got
hunchback
flow.
fool who
No,
waits
he's
his
not. No, he
turn,
doesn't.
who says,
For a guy doing Bela Lugosi, he's got kind of a flow.
Well, we're doing the other guy.
Or Boris Karloff. Yeah.
shock the body.
I was blank on his name.
Shock the body. Shock the body, body shock.
Shock to the body.
Igor, you idiot. Bring me
This is amazing that rap has become the basis for most popular music nowadays.
This
That
was
people-
83,
Yeah,
man.
and it's just like people trying to figure out what rap is, and it's just like the Romans trying to explain what a rhinoceros looks like, you know, or a giraffe or something like that. Where it's like, I've heard about this horse with a long neck.
I heard
and you
about
see-
this camel leopard thing.
Yeah, and when they draw them, it just looks. This is like, yeah, it's like talking, but it's music, and there's a beat, and it's just like, oh, I could figure this out. You know?
Rhyme, I guess.
If we give it Up, beat up, and beat. It'll be right.
Stay away from words like orange, probably.
yeah, definitely. So this last thing I was going to play, and this kind of involves, you mentioned Frank Zappa. This kind of involves him. Are you guys? Is anybody here familiar with the Shags?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I've heard of them, but I never heard them.
they're the greatest rock band of all time.
So I was completely unaware of this band up until today. Somehow, this has just fallen completely through my fucking radar. So I just wanted to read a little bit about the Shags before we actually hear it. The band they're from Fremont, New Hampshire. They formed in 1968, and it's composed of sisters Dorothy Wiggin and Betty Wiggin and Helen Wiggin, and later Rachel Wiggin. And
they had an album called Wiggin' Out, I think.
So they put out this record in it's the only record they put out. It's called Philosophy of the World. It came out in 1968, and their dad, Austin Wiggin, saw a palm reader when he was a kid, and the palm reader said that you're going to marry a strawberry blonde woman. She's going to bear you a bunch of children. She's then going to die, and then your kids are going to be the greatest band ever.
And that's what happened.
And so that was the prophecy. And what happened is all of that came to pass, and then his wife died, and he was very upset. Obviously, after he buried his wife, though, he's like, oh my God, we have to start a band. The problem is none of his daughters played instruments, so he gave them all instruments, and they recorded this album. So this is people who've been playing instruments for about a week, doing a record, and they decided just to throw in a Halloween record in there too. So there is this is the Shags. This is called It's Halloween.
So this is where the genre noise came from.
It sounds like when you're a kid and you're playing the guitar and you record yourself to see how you sound.
Yeah. Sounds like everyone who tries Guitar Hero for the first time.
It's Halloween, it's Halloween, it's time for scares, it's time for screams. It's Halloween, it's Halloween.
That's the hook.
Why even
Wasn't this the title track to Halloween 3?
It's time for games, it's time for fun, not for just one, but for everyone.
Do they have an accent?
No, they're just from New Hampshire and weird.
They sing with a weird accent, actually.
You know what?
Is it like Lawrence Welk?
Yeah, because they like their best known song is called "My Pal Foot Foot," and
It's about a dog or something.
and it's
right?
like they're just like "My Pal Foot 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 Foot."
You know what it sounds like? It sounds like when they did a bunch of the old kung fu movies and they wanted to bring some of them in English. They did this with Enter the Dragon. I know that for sure. You know the guy that was the bad guy in Enter the Dragon? He had the random fake hands.
Yeah.
So that guy doesn't actually speak English.
Yeah.
He only speaks, I think, Cantonese. And so, but he speaks English in the movie, and that's actually his voice. And they did the same thing in Big Trouble in Little China too. The guy who was Thunder.
Oh, no shit.
He has a couple of lines in English. That motherfucker doesn't speak English. They gave him a script and told him how to sound out the words. So he just says, basically, they taught him to sound it out, so he just says them, and that's why it just sounds so fucking weird. Because this guy doesn't have any context for how these words are supposed to be
Bull
said.
Young in Bloodsport, it was kind of the same thing, right? Where it's just like they dubbed him saying the stuff over him moving his mouth.
Yeah.
Which was kind of syncopated with him saying it in English.
Yeah.
But to get so it was like kind of a phonetic reading of you are next.
Yes.
You know that.
But it just he says it's so weird that it doesn't make any sense.
But these are
So that's exactly what that sounds like.
Yeah.
They don't know what English is. They're just
sounding it out.
phonetically sounding it out.
So I guess, Derek, tell us about Wrestling Pro Wrestling. When's the next show?
Next show's November 16th, Turkey Mania.
Turkey Mania. That's right.
It's the Southgate American Foreign Legion, 9535 California Avenue, Southgate, California. Beautiful Southgate,
Right near the Walmart.
Right near the beautiful Walmart in Southgate, California.
That's the best damn Walmart in LA.
So if you're going to the Walmart, I recommend you come by, check out the show. Who knows what crazy shit we're going to do. I know we're going to crown our first champion.
Yeah, that
That's
belt.
cool. That's
you made the belt,
yes,
right?
that super slick belt that I made, and I think have to
35 pounds of gold, my man.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. God damn it!
And my parents loved the last show. Actually,
Oh yeah,
they sat down and they watched it.
that's
And
awesome. That's so great.
They were very impressed with the battle royal, the Monster Mash battle royal.
That's good.
Derek, where can people find you on the internet, sir?
And if you want to follow Serial Man, you can find him on Twitter at El Serial Man. That's always a good time.
EL Serial Man.
Yeah,
like,
EL Serial Man. Spanish. It's he's from Spain.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Serial
how's he feel
hombre.
about this new Catalonian
Yeah, is he
independence movement?
pro Madrid or pro Catalan?
Yeah.
I mean,
Or is he Basque? You know?
I think he's Basque.
Oh, okay.
So he's kind of just trying to stay out of it. If you want to see me post pictures of crap I make, you can follow me on Instagram at Super Derek Smith.
All right. Well, yeah, you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/TheGoodsPod. We're on Twitter at TheGoodsPod. And big shout out to our friend Richard Eden up there in the North Pole doing the hard work at TheGoodsPod.com. Pat, what should the folks do when they get to iTunes?
They should rate, review, and subscribe. And after that, on November 10th, after you rate, review, and subscribe, Brett's Comedy Ozfest at Time Warp Records in Mar Vista, neighborhood of Los Angeles. Great comedy show. Deborah Giovanni, a lot of other guests from the show, Steph Tolev, David Bory,
Devin Blake, Ron
Black, Ron Babcock, house band Head Joint with all your new metal classics. And yeah, it's going to be fun. And doing all of those things shows the attitude of gratitude.
And if you don't have the attitude of gratitude, then fuck you.
And song of the week this week, my favorite French Halloween novelty song. This is Nicole Paquin with Mon Mari c'est Frankenstein. We'll see you next week.
Mon mari c'est Frankenstein, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il a tout d'un croque-mitaine, et tel qu'il est, moi je l'aime. Oh, oui, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il est né par un soir d'hiver, et de la foudre et du tonnerre, dans un château en Angleterre. Les mains d'un vieux savant expert. Si on le prend pour Lucifer, oh, moi je sais qu'il a su me plaire. Oui, mon mari c'est Frankenstein, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il a tout d'un croque-mitaine, et tel qu'il est, moi je l'aime. Oh, 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 oui, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il ne sort qu'à la nuit tombée, pour ne pas se faire remarquer. Car s'il venait à le rencontrer, les passants seraient effrayés. Camarade, vous comprenez, je suis sûr de sa fidélité. Ouais, mon mari c'est Frankenstein, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il a tout d'un croque-mitaine, et tel qu'il est, moi je l'aime. Oh, 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 oui, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Yeah! Si vous entendez un soir un cri d'effroi dans la nuit noire, il ne faut pas vous émouvoir. Une passante a dû le voir. C'est sûr qu'elle fera des cauchemars ou qu'elle monte sur le trottoir. Ouais, mon mari c'est Frankenstein, mon mari c'est Frankenstein. Il a tout d'un croque-mitaine, et tel qu'il est, moi je l'aime. Frankenstein, Frankenstein. Mon mari c'est Frankenstein.
The Goods from the Woods was mixed, edited, and distributed by me, Rivers Langley. You can find the show on Twitter at TheGoodsPod. Our theme song was composed by DJ Smiles. Check him out on Twitter at DJ Smiles.